Hello and welcome back to Granted Gardens. Today we've got a fun project that we are going to start and share with you. I don't know that this is necessarily going to be a how-to video. Once we get the hang of this, we will do an actual full how-to video. But today we are breaking out a gift that Tyler gave me for my birthday this year, back in March, and we're finally getting an opportunity to use it. So this is how we are going to be planning on making our own essential oils moving forward. I showed you guys a shot there of what the setup kind of looks like. So now we're just going to be picking from the herb garden. I decided I wanted to start off with sage first. So we're going to go ahead and pick some sage and take it in and start seeing what this baby can do. All right, so we've got some of our sage here, fresh from the garden. We'll go see what we can do with this.
We've got our hot plate on the bottom. That's what's going to give us the heat to boil the distilled water that's down here. If you do end up getting this set up and trying it like we are, you want to make sure you get a boiling flask for the bottom. There are many different flasks. You can buy this and it's just a piece of glass. All the glass you see here is the same type of glass that you're familiar with, Pyrex. It can take high heat without breaking, cracking, exploding, anything like that. So your boiling flask goes on the bottom. You got your hot plate underneath to boil the water. You got the right type of glass. And then as the water boils, it's going to come up and the steam is going to come through all the mass up here, all the sage. And I believe this was called a biomass flask. And that's literally just to hold your stuff. And it's going to keep the steam going through it. There's this piece missing off the top, and this has just a little plug in the top. I got this specifically so eventually we could get either a thermometer for the top, but what this is going to do is just redirect the steam, because it's going to come up into the top first, and any excess steam that's too heavy is just going to drop back down in here, get redone, sent back up. But the actual steam is going to come up, build up, and then slowly come through here. This is going to attach to this piece. And you see these little fingers inside of here, these little glass fingers that go all the way into the middle. Those are to help the steam cool back down and turn back into water and oil on its way back through. And then we'll just collect it in another flask with this elbow on the end. Once we have this kind of full, we'll pour it into this, which is called a separation flask. And then as you can see, it's got a valve on the bottom. So what's going to happen is once we pour it in here, we're going to fill this up. The oil will separate, and then we can drain the water off the bottom, leaving the oil, and then we'll capture the oil in this little tiny flask.
So as I mentioned, this is our first time trying this. So, bear with us, but we're going to show you guys kind of the process. You're going to learn along with us. So we're not filling up entirely the sage section yet. We want to do some runs here just to make sure that we've got everything moving. Turning on the heat. Let that warm up. Alright, while we're waiting on that to heat up, we never really slow down here. We're always doing something. So I'm over here. I had an aloe plant that I transplanted recently, up-potted, and forgot about. I left it outside. So it started kind of dying back a little bit. I think it's coming back to life, but there were a lot of little leaves on the aloe plant that started to die back. So what I'm doing, I'm going to harvest the aloe out of these leaves that I had to pull off the plant. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm just taking an aloe leaf, I'm cutting it in half so that it looks like this, and then I am using a spoon to just scoop out the aloe. I'm going to put it in this bowl. And then the idea here is that I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to eventually take the aloe that's in this bowl and put it in ice cube trays to freeze it, so that if we've got things like burns or mosquito bites, we can just pull the ice cubes out of the freezer and apply them to any areas that we have issues with. I am also saving seeds. Multitasking at its finest. So it's not a ton of aloe, but at least we're not wasting our plant. So I'm gonna just take this, put it into the little sections here on this ice cube tray. It's not gonna fill up much, but like I said, whatever we get out of it is still beneficial. So we filled up, we got just 3 little ice cubes here, but you know, this is gonna be perfectly fine. We'll let this sit in the freezer until it freezes over. Like I said, you can use these to apply, you just pop out, use them to apply on burns or bug bites or any kind of injuries like that. Also, you can save them and just add them to water. You can do like aloe water ice cubes. So there's a lot you can do with this.
We've got the whole setup here. It's currently running. We've got the water boiling on the bottom. You can see from the water vapor building up on the sides of this guy that we have steam coming up. Same thing up here. You can see some of it is attaching to the sides, the water vapor turning back into a liquid and coming straight back down. That's okay, because it's gonna pass through this again, come down here, reboil, come back up. And we're basically just gonna run this water down until we have just like a little bit in the bottom. You don't want to run the glass dry under heat because you increase the chances that you may crack it, even though it is heat resistant. So we boil the water. Right now I've got it set just below max, and this is enough to keep the water good and boiling, producing steam. But because we have an air-cooled jacket up here, we are losing a tiny bit of the steam through the neck here. So I don't want to turn it all the way up because then we're going to be losing even more steam. So this may just be a longer process than what it would be, because this right here is what I'm calling the air-cooled jacket. It's got the little fingers to help cool it down, but we may end up upgrading to what's called a water-cooled jacket. And instead of having the little fingers, it's actually like got a coil, kind of like moonshiners have, where you have the coil inside. The coil is what your vapor moves through, but then there's actually an inlet and an outlet for cold water to be passed around that coil, so it cools it off much, much faster, so you won't lose any of the steam out the end. But the product from that and the product from this is exactly the same. So it's coming through here, cooling off, coming back down. We're filling up this flask here, and then we're just gonna actually repeat this cycle over and over again throughout the course of the day. We've been going for just over 5 minutes, and we've dropped maybe half an inch at most of water. So we're still getting a lot more out of this, and you can actually see if you look straight through the side of this guy that we're even starting to turn the water a little bit green from all of the oils and steam that's passed through the sage once and come back down into the water. At the end, we're gonna have the water in here that will just refill with fresh distilled water. It has to be distilled, otherwise it's gonna have impurities in it. Come through here, and over here we should have more concentration of oil, but you're still gonna have quite a bit of water, and it's probably gonna look something like that. But you can use the water from here in making soap, you can cook with it, you can do a lot of stuff, but what we are actually gonna do is take the water from this side, and when we go 2 runs through the way it is, we're going to empty this and we're going to combine the waters with the water underneath of this. Once we separate the oil out, put it back in, and that should give us an even higher return of oil the 3rd time.
Okay, so we've upgraded a little bit here. You want to tell us what you did?
Yes, so since this is air cooled, I think we are not cooling the air down as much as, well, I would like to. So I have a pot of ice cold water over there, and every so often, just here on this last tail end of this piece, I'm taking these washcloths off, dumping them in. You can see the steam rolling off this thing as I take them off. So they're getting pretty hot. Obviously, it's steam going through there. Getting them cold again, and then just wrapping them back around. The idea is we're trying to cool the steam down as much as possible, so all of it, by the time it comes over here, turns back into a liquid. Because I already drained off the water off the bottom of the first batch that we did, and I can't 100% tell, but it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of oil in there, which this air-cooled is the least effective way to do this, but it's also the cheapest way. So we're starting with this, and I've got it down so we're not losing any steam out of here so far on the tail end of this one.
What is that tin foil you got there?
It's just to seal the space between this elbow and the flask itself. So I'm hoping that with this, after we separate this and there, the second batch, we should be able to tell the difference on how much we have.
And you have the fan going.
And I have the fan. This is actually from our grow station. It's got its own plug, so I just cut it out of there, brought it up here, plugged it in, and that's just to help evaporate as much of that heat out of these as it accumulates. That way we're just continuing to cool as fast as possible. Alright, so we're all done. We're broken down for the most part. So initially we had everything, just plain water in the flask, and then we were filling this guy up. So what actually happened with this, with just water, this packed full of sage, comes up, comes through. It gave us quite a bit of what's called floral water, which is just where all the aromatics and stuff get caught in here, and there's supposed to be like the oil that separates on the top. I don't know if you can see it. We'll try afterward to see inside of here to see if we can see the oil droplets that are in there. The camera might not pick it up, but we did gain a little bit. I would say like maybe 2 drops through this whole thing. I'm not even sure with 2 drops we're going to be able to separate that from the water that's in there, but we're going to give it a shot. But we got a lot of the floral water, which is good for making soaps. You can cook with it anytime that you use something that you need water for. You could even add that to just the water that you boil for pasta, and you can impart that sage flavor in there. Basil would be a good idea for that as well. You could throw it in the diffuser as well. So at the last round that we did, we've been doing this for 5 hours. We've gone through 3 rounds of plant matter. And then on the 4th round, we ended up with a lot of like this water that ended up on the bottom, which is just all the condensate that came up, and instead of being in vapor form, it immediately reconstituted and came back down into the bottom flask. There's a lot of oil in here, but there's also a lot of other stuff from the plant matter. But what we're going to do is we're going to save the floral water to use. We're also going to save this water, and then next time, as you can see, I actually threw a bunch of the stems and the leftover bits and bobs that we had left over into the water in the bottom, and that actually started to generate a lot more oil than we did just by putting it in the bio flask in the top. So next time around, what we're going to do is we're going to grind this up a little bit, the fresh stuff, leave it in there with the water, and then each round, about 2 hours apiece, we'll actually disassemble it, add more sage to that, top it off with water, and then keep doing it that way. And then the last round, we'll basically take all the water in here and try to boil it all off. And that should give us the highest concentration of oil. So, round 1 was not the best, but it was good for experimentation, and it gave us a new look at what we can do to make this more effective. So this will work, user error this time. But user error leads to better trips next time, so here's to hoping.
So you guys got to see how we're trying to start making essential oils today. I did post another essential oils video a while back, so I'll go ahead and I'll put the link here. But for now, we're going to enjoy dinner, and I hope that you guys all have a fabulous day. As always, thank you so much for watching.
And we look forward to sharing more with you soon.